Welcome back to the show. My good friend Bill Barr, former Attorney General and author of One Damn Thing After Another. Bill Barr, you're pretty, first of all, welcome. Great to see you again. Wonderful, wonderful. You're
Hi,
nice
Larry.
to do this.
Great to be.
You are pretty teed off, rightfully so, at this leak. And if my reading this morning is correct, you're calling for a special counsel. Is that right?
I think that ultimately this should lead to prosecution if it's borne out that this was done to disrupt the court, which it appears to have been. And it could be the Justice Department, it could be a special counsel. But at the end of the day, I think whoever did this belongs in jail.
It was one of the liberal clerks. I mean, I was just reading, there's 9 justices and 36 clerks, if I have that right. 45 people would have their hands on this. You think it was one of the liberal clerks?
I don't think it was a justice, but beyond that, I don't want to speculate about it.
Oh, come on, Bill.
Could have been a clerk.
Oh, come on, Bill. You can speculate. This is the Kudlow
I
show.
think whoever leaked this was trying to derail what they saw as this opinion.
Do you think that's going to work, the derail idea?
Well, first, I'm skeptical that they necessarily already had 5 votes. I think things may well have been in flux, but it could have the opposite effect. It could make it harder for someone to change their view on this, for fear that they would be succumbing to this kind of pressure. So I don't know how this is going to play.
So that's an interesting point. You're not sure that the Justice Alito's draft has 5 votes with it. Is that what you're saying? I haven't heard this before.
Right, not necessarily locked in. I don't think they were. Remember the Obamacare, Larry, where that vote was changed at the very end before it went out, and I'm not so sure these votes were locked in. But it's quite possible that someone who generally is supportive of Alito's view, but was perhaps could be one away, may be now reluctant to change their vote. So the leaking could have just the opposite effect of what the leaker thought it would have.
You know, I want to read, President Biden is trying to expand this into a decision that would affect all manner of personal issues. He's talking about, actually, let me just listen to the sound. Here's the sound. You take a listen, then you comment on it.
What happens if you have a state changes the law saying that children who are LGBTQ can't be in classrooms with other children? Is that legit under the way that the decision is written? What are the next things that are going to be attacked?
So, Bill, he's trying to make this, into a widespread personal thing. He's also mentioned gay marriage, banning gay marriage. He's also talking about how this Roe v. Wade decision, if it were overturned, would affect so-called private sexual acts between 2 men, whether or not people can have a child, whether they can have an abortion. So he's trying to widen this, but as I think you know, in the draft opinion by Alito, he kept it narrow, just Roe v. Wade. So is Biden just completely wrong here? Is this just him playing politics where Alito was specific, Biden is generalizing for political reasons?
Yeah, I think it's totally him playing politics, and it's a parade of horribles. The draft makes it very clear it's focused strictly on abortion. But beyond that, outside the context of abortion, you have other things that come into play, like reliance interests. So that I don't see them upsetting the ruling on single-sex marriage or any of that stuff. People have relied on that.
I want to just put, if the producers could put back on the full screen, I want to read Alito's section in this draft, because he very specifically addresses, okay? So here's what Alito says. To ensure that our decision is not misunderstood or mischaracterized, we emphasize that our decision concerns the constitutional right to abortion and no other right. Bill Barr, I don't see how Alito could be more specific And in that sense, I don't see how Biden can be even more wrong.
Right, I agree. I think it's quite clear that this is limited to abortion. We haven't seen the kind of reaction on these other issues that we've seen over the last 50 years on abortion.
So let me go back to this, the constitutional question. Abortion is not mentioned in the Constitution. In some sense, that's the heart of the Alito decision. And because it is not expressly mentioned in the Constitution, it should be put back to voters, legislators, state elections, if you will. Do you agree with that logic?
Absolutely. I've felt all along that as an original matter, the way the founding fathers would have said that this is an issue that has to be left to the states. And they don't take a position on abortion at all.
I know, we never
in
see
the Constitution.
Yeah. So the other point I want to make, I think I know the answer, but you're a former attorney general. You're also a close personal friend. I mean, look, there is a woman's right to choose, Bill, but who speaks for the unborn? Who speaks? I said on the show last night, I want to save America. I want to save America's kids. There were over 60 million abortions, Bill Barr, since 1973, Roe v. Wade. To me, that is a terrible loss of life, and we should save America's children and bring them into the greatest country in the world with all these great opportunities. It's a moral issue. It's an economic issue. It's just a huge issue. I mean, you support where Alito is trying to go?
Oh, absolutely, Larry, and I agree with your sentiments, too. But this is now going to be left to the democratic process, and people like you and I and others can have our say, and those who want more liberal regime for abortion will have their say, and then each state will make its decision.
As it should be, I suppose, as it should be. But I would like to save America's children. I think the number, Bill, was 63 million abortions since 1973. To me, that's God's creation, these kids, the unborn, the fetuses. It's just a terrible, tragic loss of life.
I agree. All
right.
And I think, I think public sentiment, as public has seen what this entails, I think public sentiment has shifted on it.
Yeah, I do too. I think the support for abortion's way down, particularly with restrictions on abortion is what people want. Bill Barr, thank you ever so much. Folks, I don't mind shilling for my pal. You can buy his new book, One Damn Thing After Another. You can do it with one click on Amazon. You go for it.